I now want to talk about the curious case of Safie. As I was saying, I'm always interested in how Turks and Muslims are represented. Okay, so this is chapter 14. Uh, and Safie is important because Safie is the woman who appears in the house um, that the creature is seeking refuge in and trying to learn the ways of men before he decides to pursue Dr. Frankenstein and his family. Now, this Safie comes, and we don't know. Well, the creature doesn't know who this woman is, and then he understands that Safie doesn't speak the language that the family, the old father and the son are speaking, and they're teaching um, her German, probably. And so he is listening as Felix, the son, is teaching Safie his language. And I find this very, very interesting because he is kind of observing them from a distance. And it has always been, again, remember how I was talking about, we can look for things, I mean, situations that talk about women's situation without calling them women's situation. On the contrary, what is happening here is that the creature is almost like passively learning as somebody else is being taught something. And this is a theme that you find a lot in women's biographies. And it immediately reminded me of an important figure in Turkish literature, Fatma Aliye, the first female Turkish novelist. In her biography, written by a friend of hers, actually, we learn that as a girl in late Ottoman times, she wasn't being provided with enough, let's say, tutelage. So her brother, they had a tutor to teach her brother French, and she was kind of observing uh, from afar. And as is with these situations, if you've tried to teach children anything, I observed it myself. As I try to teach my niece at the table, my nephew who's sitting further away understands and repeats the words that I'm teaching more efficiently. There's this interesting thing about passive learning, but in any case, so in Fatma Aliye's case, the brother was being taught French, but she was learning much better. So the tutor said, this girl who's sitting away, actually, she's a much better tutor than this boy. So actually, she gets her own tutor in the end. But in any case, you find this not just in Turkish society, but also in English biographies as well. You find that the women were always kind of trying to kind of sponge off of their sort of brothers learning, or they were going to universities and listening on lectures. This is the history of how women were in the end accepted to university, is that they were going on, because they were public lectures, they were listening, and then they were asking permission to sit the exams. And then when the professor saw that when they set the exams, they did well, even better than some of the male students, they realized, oh, okay, so these people who were not supposed to be teaching have learned much better than the males that we were teaching. But in any case, so there's this interesting thing in which the creature learns possibly much better um, uh, German than Safie. Right. And then we get this story, and after he has learned the language, he can decipher the story of Safie, and then we get the story of Safie from the creature. So, the father of Safie had been the cause of their ruin. He was a Turkish merchant and had inhabited Paris for many years when, for some reason which I could not learn, he became obnoxious to the government. He was seized and cast into prison the very day that Safie arrived from Constantinople to join him. He was tried and condemned to death. The injustice of his sentence was very flagrant, and all Paris was indignant. So, up to this point, it's strangely I hope you have noticed the parallel of another text that we read. Um, we didn't read the whole thing, but remember how I was talking to you about Tale of Two Cities, in which um, Lucy and Dr. Manette were being tried, and then there's this English gentleman who listens to their trial because um, the revolutionaries think that these, the mother, the daughter, and the father, they are somehow on the side of aristocrats, so they should be tried and they should be put in prison as well. So it's this kind of, and Dickens is later than um, Shelley. There's this understanding. I mean, there's almost like this trope of the English gentleman um, with a very good heart, looking at how people outside of England are treating the justice system. The justice system is just not working. And we shall see how the justice system isn't working when Justine gets condemned for Dr. Frankenstein's brother's death. So already there's this understanding that the courts aren't working properly, and Felix, here a Swiss man, but standing in for the good Englishman, has witnessed how badly Safie's father has been treated. And it's interesting. So the injustice of his sentence was very flagrant. All Paris was indignant. So even the French people were saying, this man doesn't deserve this punishment that the court is giving him. And this is the important thing. It was judged that his religion and wealth, rather than the crime alleged against him, had been the cause of his condemnation. And it's very interesting. Already, um, um, Mary Shelley is talking about how the justice system is prejudiced against immigrants, basically, particularly Muslims. So this is happening in Paris, and one feels not much has changed. So already she is talking about how there's anti-Muslim sentiment in the French system. And again, this being the 1830s, I'm guessing there weren't as many Muslims, let's say, as Jews, and we know that there were several cases in which Jews were mistreated by the justice system in Paris, and this would this would have been made public in the paper. So it's also interesting in the sense that it's one of the first instances in which kind of anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim sentiment become metaphors for one another. Here, the Muslim is clearly the Muslim character is clearly pointing or is a stand-in for the Jewish inhabitants of Paris who were being unjustly treated by the justice system. Anyway, so Felix sees this at the court, and it's very funny, isn't it? I mean, we're not quite sure what Felix was doing in the courtroom, but you get a sense that people were going to courtrooms. It was bit like reading the newspaper. So you go to the courtroom to understand or to learn what's happening in the society. So it was a place that people went to. So he goes, he sees this injustice, and he decides, okay, I'm gonna somehow save these people. And then we start learning that this Turkish father isn't a very good man after all. And so the Turk, amazed and delighted, endeavored to kindle the zeal of his the zeal of his deliverer by promises of reward and wealth. So, if you save me, I'm going to give you this much money. Of course, the Turks are loaded. So, okay. And now we get a sense of Safie, or Safie, I guess. It's spelled Safie. So Safie related that her mother was a Christian Arab. Seized and made a slave by the Turks, recommended by her beauty, she had won the heart of her father, of the father of Safie, who married her. The young girl spoke in high and enthusiastic terms of her mother, who, born in freedom, spurned the bondage to which she was now reduced. So again, this very strange understanding that the Christian Arabs were super liberal and the Turks put women in harems. And again, this is the exact same kind of image of the harem that her mother was talking about when she was talking about, oh, we shouldn't treat women as Turks treat women. So Mary Shelley probably doesn't have hasn't studied Turkish culture much. So what she knows is mostly hearsay, and naturally what she knows is what her mother has written about it. So spurned the bondage to which she was reduced. So the mother instructed Safie in the tenets of her religion. So Safie was raised as a Christian and taught her to aspire to higher powers of intellect and an independence of spirit forbidden to the female followers of Muhammad. This lady died, but her lessons were indelibly impressed on the mind of Safie. Again, the relationship between Safie and her mother very much kind of mirrors the relationship between Mary Shelley and her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft. So this lady died. Okay, so Safie sickened at the prospect of again returning to Asia and being immured within the walls of a harem, allowed only to occupy herself with infantile amusements. Right. So, and it's very interesting, and then somehow she gets rid of her father. I mean, she's very kind of she knows how to get out of this bondage that she has with her father. And so she basically flees. And it's very interesting. She says, taking with her some jewels that belonged to her and a sum of money, she quitted Italy with an attendant. So at that time, they had already fled to Italy with her father. And in Italy, she leaves her father and goes back to Geneva while the father is going to Istanbul. But it's very interesting. So she quitted Italy with an attendant. And again, it's a shame that we haven't covered much of Shakespeare, but this the daughter leaving the father with some of the father's money and her jewelry is a theme. And leaving the father because of the father's religious, let's say, associations is a theme. This is a theme in Merchant of Venice, in which the daughter of a Jew leaves the Jew's house with some money and her jewels and goes and gets married to a Christian. So again, we get the sense that there's this literary tradition of the due to, like this is from Shakespeare, the Jewish daughter leaving her family to come getting married to a Christian kind of a persona reasserts itself here. Right. So this is Safie, which I find very, very important. And I think I'm gonna leave it there for the video. We might discuss more things in class.